The Catalyst, a CEP podcast on bold leadership in the Ocala Metro. Hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership. Sponsored by Douglas Law Firm. And recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios, located in Ocala, Florida. Welcome to The Catalyst. I'm your host, Natalie McComb, Vice President for the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership Foundation, and I'm joined today by Gary Mishkin, CEO of Artemis Plastics. Great to have you on the show, Gary.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
So Artemis Plastics first entered the local manufacturing market in 2014, so nearly a decade ago, but many in Ocala may not have heard of your company. So what does Artemis Plastics do?
Artemis Plastics is a medical device and industrial products contract manufacturer. We specialize in injection molding. However, we have a lot of additional value-added capabilities, such as pad printing, UV LED printing, ultrasonic welding, full product assembly, and we could even manage the packaging, labeling, and sterilization of medical devices.
Wow, so you have an extensive resume in research and development, and with a master's degree in medical engineering from George Washington University and an MBA from the University of Virginia, with numerous publications and patents. So what inspired you to choose this field of work?
I've always had an interest in the sciences and medicine, as well as an entrepreneurial spirit and an interest in business. In college, I was an economics major, but I also completed the pre-medical curriculum, which gave me both a business and a science background. With this combination, I interviewed with a number of financial institutions, mostly companies that dealt with medical device and pharmaceutical drugs. And on one of my interviews, I actually got along with everybody really well, except for the person I was supposed to work for. We kind of clashed a little bit.
Oh, that's a problem.
It was interesting. However, she pointed out that I don't want to be on the finance side. I want to be on the business side. And I kind of sat back. I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. What do you suggest? She said, look, you're living in Chicago at the time. Contact Abbott, contact Baxter. So I did. They basically said, go back and advanced degree in some type of a science discipline. So from that, I went and got a master's in biomedical engineering from the George Washington University. After I got my degree, I continued to work in the renal division at GW for another 7 years doing clinical trials. We did lots of different studies on medical devices, pharmaceuticals. We did bench research and a lot of what I call translational studies, basically taking bench research and finding ways to apply it medically. And that's really what drives me and motivates me. And that's kind of how I made my transition.
And so for those laymen who may be listening, what do you mean by bench research? What is that?
So bench research is in the lab.
Okay.
Okay, so basically we would do a lot of simulated studies of different types of dialysis therapies, flows through catheters, needles, dialyzers, et cetera. We'd be doing clearance studies, things like that.
Okay, so even though you had this interest in medicine, never the desire to be a doctor, you preferred to be in the lab?
Look, I mean, being a doctor was always interesting to me. However, I really enjoy changing things up every day.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of new projects every day as opposed to seeing patients on a daily basis.
Which I'm sure in starting Artemis Plastics and obviously having that business background, it was still, that opportunity to kind of get out of the lab and look at, what kind of a culture you wanted to build at this organization that you were creating. How would you describe the culture at Artemis Plastics?
Culture is very important to us. So we lead by example. We want everybody to, work hard, do a good job, do the right thing even when no one is looking. That's really what we're looking for. So,
which I'm sure you try to exemplify as a leader as well. And, with the research that you're doing there and we'll talk a little bit about the plants that you have here in Ocala. I'm sure it's one of those things that you can have some really exciting days where you make some new discoveries, and then you can have some frustrating days where you try something and it just doesn't work. So you can't be afraid to fail.
For sure. Actually, failure is a great way to learn.
Yeah.
And anyway, as far as going back to the culture, an interesting story. I remember very early on after we bought the plant, something went out. The customer caught it and sent us basically a complaint saying, hey, this part is not to spec. So we pulled the team together and we determined, okay, what is the root cause? How do we prevent it from happening? And let's go ahead and institute the processes and procedures so that it doesn't happen again.
And I understand Artemis Plastics has two plants located here in Ocala with a combined 62,000 square feet of space. And one of the features is an in-house tooling room. So can you explain what that means and what are the benefits to your client to have that?
Sure, absolutely. So injection molding requires tooling, also called a mold. The injection molding machine, also called a press, will clamp shut in order to keep the molds closed so that you can inject the plastic at high pressures, right? And that's how you make the parts. At Artemis, we have presses as small as 17 tons and as large as 1,200 tons. When we refer to this tonnage rating, it's basically the pressure at which the machine exerts the force to keep the mold closed as we're injecting the plastic. 1,200 tons is a massive amount of pressure. And with such high pressures, if something is just slightly out of alignment, the mold or the components of the mold could potentially be damaged. Since we have a full in-house machine shop, also called our tooling department, we have the capability to take that damaged mold out of the press, fix the damage, and return the mold back to production, many times within a couple hours. So this allows us to keep the parts in production, which of course our customers are pleased with. And then of course I'm pleased with because our machines are running and that's how we make our money. So we can handle approximately 98% of any tool maintenance in-house. The other 2% that we may not be able to fix in-house, we have local contractors that we work with.
Well, I'm sure that saves you not only time for your customer, but it saves money because if they're working with a third party producer, they may not get that response time and the line may be down for longer and dealing with the back and forth, correct?
Exactly right,
Yeah.
exactly right. We've had some customers who have worked with other injection molders, and they haven't had the tool shop, and anytime it goes down, they got to send the tool out to another shop. So it's not down for a couple hours like we can turn it, but it's down for 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
Which, of course, if you delay product, you're going to delay sales.
Yeah, yeah. And I understand that the facility also has three Class 8 clean rooms. So, what is a clean room and what is that used for?
Sure. So a clean room are, I'll call them separated room. They're kind of isolated rooms that are usually a positive pressure because incoming air is pumped into the room through a high efficiency particulate air filter, also called a HEPA filter. Since the air coming into the room passes through the HEPA filter, it has a very low particulate count, which is basically just particles in the air. An ISO 8 clean room, also some people call it a class 100,000, has less than 100,000 particles of size 0.3 micrometers per cubic meter in the air. So basically, we measure the air. We have a machine that pulls in the volume, measures the amount of particles in the air. Obviously, the lower the amount of particles, the cleaner the air. And it's very important when you're dealing with things like medical devices, sensitive electronics, et cetera, that you don't have these extra particulates in the air. So there are other requirements of a clean room, such as how often the air volume is filtered. And then we also do microbial count. So we'll swab the floors, the walls, the surfaces, et cetera, to make sure that the microbial count is very, very low. So all these together basically define a clean room. Artemis has over 3,200 square feet of HEPA filtered rooms that meet this requirement.
Wow. And what are some examples of a medical device that Artemis Plastics helps manufacture where this level of infection control is really that important?
So some of the products that we make in our clean room are devices that are used in surgical procedures, such as a device we use for knee repair, for meniscus repair. Another product we make is for a local company here in Florida that has a really unique syringe for the delivery of Botox. Another device we have is a nasal trumpet. It's a medical device that's used for trauma, any type of facial trauma, in order to keep the airways open.
Wow. So it really runs the gamut between cosmetic procedures to knee replacements.
Exactly right.
Wow. Okay. And I know that in 2019, Artemis Plastics was recognized by Grow Florida as a company to watch, and they recognized 50 businesses, and your business was one of them. So, what has been your strategy in balancing that growth that you've seen with the need to maintain the quality of your products?
At Artemis Plastics, we stress that quality is everyone's responsibility. We instill this principle to the operators that are in front of the presses, the quality inspectors that are reviewing the parts, and basically everyone that is directly or indirectly associated with the production of parts. We empower our teammates to speak up if they see something that causes the parts to be out of spec so that we can fix that problem quickly and efficiently.
That's wonderful. And I know that part of the growth that you have seen at Artemis Plastics is, I'm sure, bringing on new clients. How do you go about doing that in such a specialized area? Are there different conferences that you attend? What does that outreach look like for your business?
It's been interesting. So far, we've only been growing by word of mouth, existing customers. However, we recently hired our first business development manager who joined our team in September. So Amanda's been with us now for about 4 or 5 months, and we're already starting to see success in her reaching out to the customers. We have some new areas with the new plant. Of course, we want to get new medical device assembly and production, and she's found a couple customers for us already.
That's wonderful. But I mean, how great that you saw that level of growth just from word of mouth. It must mean that you're keeping your customers very happy and that they're happy with the product, that they're able to recommend it to other businesses that they work with. So I think that's a testament to the products that you produce.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we like to keep the quality tops, and as they always say, it's much easier to get additional business from an existing customer than to go find the new one. So we got to keep our existing customers happy.
100%. And any particular projects or products that you're most excited about that you're working on currently?
We have several projects that are, I still call in the pipeline. They still could be a year to 2 years away. For example, we're working on a catheter for benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is really interesting, and I think will really have a significant impact on the quality of people's lives.
And what is that, Gary? I need the layman's
Okay.
terms.
So, benign prostatic hyperplasia is basically just large prostate issues that are
Okay.
non-cancerous.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So, we're working with a group called Blue Halo. They're
Uh-huh.
in the Orlando area, and they've developed this really unique catheter. And they came to us in order to mass produce it. They're in the middle of their clinical trials.
Hmm.
And it's just really an exciting project. And it was one of those when you look at it, you're like, wow, that's really
Hmm.
going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So that was very exciting. Every week we're introduced to something new. I mean, we have several new non-medical devices that are also exciting, working with the group to hopefully help clean the environment of what they call forever toxins. And
Mm.
we have others that just help individuals, improve their proficiency at their given sport.
Mm. Interesting. And what's next for Artemis Plastics? Do you have plans for expansion? I know obviously with the addition of your business development manager, you're hoping to have some new partnerships coming down the pike, but what's coming up?
Now that we have our second facility up and running, where we're really looking to expand our device assembly and final packaging. We already have 3 projects that we're going to be moving into the second facility, and we have a lot of additional room for expansion of packaging and clean room assembly, etc.
Hmm. So really in bringing on that second facility, you're really kind of preparing for that growth that you're hoping to see with some of your work in business development as well.
Absolutely. We actually did a lot of investment, a lot of it, with investment from Ocala and the CEP in order to have the infrastructure available for us to meet our customers' needs. We have what we call a dry clean room, so that it's a humidity controlled room where we put in industrial dehumidifiers. We can get the humidity in that room down to 4%.
Impressive in
In
Florida.
Florida, very impressive, exactly. And there are a lot of devices, medical devices, and even electronic devices that are humidity sensitive.
Yeah.
So we're one of the probably very few facilities, even in the country, that have a room like this set up. The goal for us, of course, is to expand our lateral flow, like the COVID tests, the antigen tests were all lateral flow.
Mm.
So our goal is to continue to make lateral flow tests, and we have a number of projects in the works. I give a lot of credit to my colleagues, management team, coworkers at Artemis Plastics. I mean, they've really, in these past almost 10 years already, hard to believe, have really stepped up, and we've been able to grow the business. We're 4 times larger than we were when we first acquired the assets. And our system is very robust, and it's just exciting to really bring it to the next level now, especially with the new facility and our capabilities of expanding.
Hmm.
So,
And at the CEP, we talk about obviously how strong the healthcare sector is here in Ocala, but we've been starting to talk about life sciences more and that growing industry. I mean, what are you seeing in Ocala? Because I feel like you're no longer the only right the only game in town. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing here that's kind of a growing industry for us?
So obviously, with the population in Ocala, a lot of it is really healthcare driven. So a lot of the hospitals. However, I've met with a number of the CEOs of the hospitals, and they're very interested in really kind of moving into R&D. Developing new projects, new protocols, etc. So I'm hoping they'll look at Artemis Plastics as a resource if they want to develop a new device, or if they have a prototype and they want us to go ahead and assemble it in our clean rooms and help them with the sterilization. We're here for them. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of that. There are a lot of other, even smaller clinics that are beginning to develop their own projects, and we're really positioned well to assist them.
How exciting! How exciting! I'd love to see that additional growth, especially as it relates to, maybe developing something new that can, Ocala can be the first to do it. Yeah.
Love to see it. Love to see it.
So we provide our guests with the opportunity to highlight a nonprofit that they're involved with or passionate about. Who would you like to highlight today, Gary, and why?
So it's a little bit interesting. I'm always looking to support the local schools at every level. So I'm going to use that as my focus group, if you will. So, for example, I've been invited again to be a judge at the STEAM Showcase at Dr. N.H. Jones Elementary School. I did it last year. It was a lot of fun, and I'm going to do it again this year. We've participated in the Mr. Ma, Marion Regional Manufacturing Association. Youth Career Expo with the middle schools. We've toured the RAD Academy at Bellevue High School. We're learning about different projects that the students are developing. Artemis actually also hires a lot of interns. So we've hired interns from Central Florida, College of Central Florida, that is, and also several of the universities in the state of Florida. So if you're interested in manufacturing or some of the sciences, definitely keep Artemis in mind. We do have interns really throughout the year, but mostly during the summer. Okay. And the nice thing about focusing on the schools is it's not always a financial that they're looking for. A lot of it is time, and time is even more valuable than some of the financial, than just giving them a check. So that's what I enjoy doing. I like working with the students because you can give them some mentoring, guidance, whatever it may be.
And how important, for them to be able to see someone like you that is a scientist, but also a business owner and an entrepreneur and a CEO, and you wear many hats. But again, that's where, science and STEAM, the STEAM showcase and all that, that's where it can take you. And students may not get the opportunity to meet you in real life, right? To meet someone who's doing it for a career. So if you can inspire someone else to kind of follow in the footsteps and maybe eventually interning with you, I think that's a net gain for sure.
Well, thank you. We're excited for that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what a lot of these students end up doing.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Hello, I am Charlie Douglas with the Douglas Law Firm. We are a full-service law firm with many practice areas to serve your particular needs. The Douglas Law Firm is located in downtown Ocala at 110 North Magnolia Avenue. Give us a call today for a free consultation, or visit us at dhclawyers.com.
So now it's time for our lightning round questions. So we're going to get to know you a little bit, Gary.
Bum, bum, bum.
I wish I had like the little sound effects I could add, right? So what trait do you value most from members of your team?
Integrity. Really, it's integrity. We want them to do the right thing at the right time. We need them to be honest. If they make a mistake, that's okay, but own it.
And as we've discussed before, learn from it, right?
Learn from it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll all learn from it.
Yeah.
So integrity for sure.
And what's your biggest pet peeve?
From a work standpoint, biggest pet peeve is when people say, that's not my job. That's kind of a pet peeve for me. We all work together. We all wear many hats. We all have to step into, areas that may not be exactly what is defined in our job description. So that kind of ends up being a red flag sometimes for me. Other than that, I hate wet napkins or paper towels in the sink. But I don't think that's quite as relevant in this conversation.
No, but hey, it's still a pet peeve.
It sure is.
So I know for me at home, it was that I would leave the towel hanging in places, like the wet dish towel hanging in places that my husband didn't like. And finally, he jokes that it saved our marriage, but we got a towel rack. Just that act of me hanging up the towel in the towel rack, one less thing to argue about. So it's the towel rack can save a marriage sometimes when it becomes that pet peeve, right?
I do my best to pick up my socks.
There you go.
Totally understand.
So what advice would you give yourself at age 15?
I would say to myself
Yeah.
at age 15, I'd be like, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think that comes at any age. And, I think certainly at 15, you know everything. I don't know if you have children. I have an 18-year-old at home.
I do. A little younger than that, but
yeah.
they still know
Oh,
everything.
yeah. And I'm going to paraphrase, I believe it was Mark Twain who basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, when I was 18, I was surprised how little my parents knew. And when I turned 21, I was surprised how much they had learned. So at age 15, you're just not, a lot of times you don't think to ask for help or guidance. And it's not a weakness, it's a strength, in my opinion. So, go back, ask for help, because you save yourself a lot of headache.
Yeah, and if you surround yourself with good people, right, they're willing to help.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
we'd love to.
Yeah.
Love to.
And how would you describe yourself in one word?
For me, the way I would describe myself, I would use tenacious. I'm always looking for something to do, always moving to the next level, always saying, yeah, we can do that. Let's do it. Let's figure out how to do it. So definitely tenacious.
Love that. Well, thank you again. Today we were here with Gary Mishkin, CEO of Artemis Plastics. Thank you so much for being on the show, Gary.
Very much appreciate your time and glad to do it. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Catalyst, hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership, sponsored by Douglas Law Firm, and recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios. New episodes, guests, and perspectives on leadership premiere twice a month. Follow us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Have a suggestion for a future guest? Email us at thecatalyst@ocalacep.com.